Hello and welcome back, everybody, to the DanJohnUniversity.com podcast. I'm Dan John. This is episode 276. And remember, this is a question and answer podcast, so it's all about you, the listener. So if you have a question, please send them to the podcast at this address, podcast@DanJohnUniversity.com. Each week, I sit down and do my best to answer each and every question. So let's get started. We have a question from Melanik. And Melanik says, I heard you saying that when you are going on holiday, you take your kettlebell with you, but what if you can't? Oh, well, it's funny because last summer I brought my Olympic bar and my bumper plates and I traveled across the United States, Olympic lifting at hotels in Nebraska, Vermont, North Carolina, and a couple other places. So Illinois and a few others. But your question's important. I really want to give a good answer to it. I'm going for a month trip to Asia, and I'd like to know what you would recommend to stay in shape during this period with no equipment, body weight only, or equipment that are very light and can take a little space inside your luggage, like bands, for example. Is there a routine or workout that you would suggest? Well, see, I do the same thing. When I travel to Europe, in fact, it's one of my secrets to getting over jet lag. I'll tell you one thing about jet lag, and this is a small segue, but I'll go to parties sometimes and someone will say, well, here's the cure for jet lag. And I'll go, oh, so you travel to Europe? No, I never travel anywhere. And I'm like, it's one of those things, everybody has an opinion about jet lag, but until you get it, it's tough. So this past summer, I came up with a really good plan to get over jet lag. And the plan is to meet up with Tim Anderson from Original Strength. And so, of course, I fly very well, and so I was able to sleep a little bit on the flight over. We got there, we took our bags to the hotel, and then Tim and Eric and I went over to Richmond, the home of AFC Richmond. Of course, you watch Ted Lasso, and we walked 9 miles, and we also did a little workout. We also did some Original Strength, and we got home, we ate, and fell asleep, and slept 13 hours. We didn't all sleep together. We slept 13 hours and felt great when I woke up. So what do I travel with and how do I exercise? I hope already I've explained the biggest one for me. I think walking is the best thing you can do. The nice thing about being an American, especially living in a city like I do, it's really hard to walk in America. I would say the worst walking town I've ever been in would be Dallas, Texas. I was right next to the Dealey Plaza. And I asked the person at the front desk, that's the place where John F. Kennedy was shot. And I asked him, I can see the plaza from my room. How do I get there? And it was really tough to go the half mile from my hotel to the Dealey Plaza. But when you go to Europe and some other places across the world, walking is far easier than taking a car, far easier than parking. When I'm in England, when I'm in Ireland, when I'm in Denmark, I walk a lot every day. And so first and foremost, if don't have the habit of walking, walk. Now, there's two other things I got to make sure I talk about before I talk about exercise. I drink a lot of coffee and I drink a lot of water. Coffee, water. And when you travel, I would say, be sure you drink a lot of water. Now, some places in the world, you're going to have to adjust to the water. It doesn't mean the water's dirty. You just have to adjust. And of course, the next thing is sleep. But if you can get your walking, your water, and your sleep kind of dialed in, you're going to have a good trip. 2 pieces of equipment I travel with. I wouldn't say either is very expensive. I always travel with Brett Contreras' glute loop. I use the large, extra large 3. I put these around my knees. And I do this workout, and for those of you who are on my forum probably know this one pretty well. I do 15 hip thrusts, 15 clamshells. That's when you drive your knees apart, and that's what this is for. 14 hip thrusts, 14 clamshells, 13, 13, 12, 12, 11, 11, 10, 10, all the way down to 1, 1. And I got to tell you, to undo the damage of flying, that glute loop clamshell combination from 15-15 to 1-1 and I do a few original strength movements along with it, but that gets rid of most of my issues from being parked in, the airplane seat, the bus seat, the Uber seat, the taxi seat, the seat. With a set or two of any kind of hip flexor stretches, it's gonna make your, whatever you want to call your core, but you're gonna feel like you've been kind of realigned again, okay? So that's my favorite. Now, one of the things you're not going to hear from me when I travel is upper body work. And the reason is when I go into or come out of a trip, generally I'll just focus a little bit more on my upper body going on to a vacation or going on to a work trip, because, lots of hotels now have gyms, but for every minute I'm in the gym in a foreign country, that's another minute I'm not out there. And it is true now. In gyms, you get those great, those little weird side door adventures. You might meet somebody who gives you good advice about a restaurant or a museum or underappreciated area. And that is true. But so in my room, I tend to do the original strength work, the hip flexor stretch, that glute combination, and then there's another piece of equipment, and I get mine from Perform Better, and I don't know what they cost. I get them in the bags, so I'm guessing that, and I only use the black one. You put these on your socks. Boy, they're probably 99 cents to $2. Very inexpensive. I put them on my socks, and then I do that monster walk. Yes, it's just like the clamshell, but I can monster walk forward, I can monster walk backwards, I can do, little side steps, little side steps, and it really makes my hips, my whole body just feel good. When you take them off, you'll notice that you feel like you've been kind of lubricated after the flight. That's what I do. Now, a lot of people would probably add more, go to a gym and do this and do that, but again, a lot of it depends on kind of what you want out of a trip. When I was teaching in England for those couple of years, I'd be there for 3 weeks. I would do my Olympic lifts in our school gym because that was, I was in one place. All I had to do was walk a little ways to get to the gym. Very often I'd meet my students there, and we would do all kinds of interesting things. I've showed a lot of this on the YouTube before, famously like Liam showing me how to work better with wheelchair athletes. I thought that was really helpful. So for me, in my travel bag, and I use Away, there's a little thing, the handle slides up and down. These two things fit perfectly between those two handles. So literally, they take no space at all. And honestly, if all you could afford, if all you could do is these two pieces of equipment, even in your home gym, it's not bad. It's pretty good. From there, you can certainly add, obviously push-up, press-ups, though I'm not a big fan. One of the problems with travels, you're like this a lot anyway. For those of you listening, I brought my shoulders forward, pretending I'm in a tight seat. So doing push-ups sometimes will just kind of exacerbate that feeling of cramped. That's why I pretty much stick to the original strength, the glute loops, the mini band, and the walking. If you do have a good hotel gym that has a dumbbell collection, half kneeling presses are great to unwind travel damage. And of course, if you get a chance, hang from anything you possibly can. I remember being with Adrian Craddock down there in Galway, and he would hang from everything, no matter where we went. If there was a castle with a gate on it, he would hang from the gate. If he hung there at Salt Hill on that great diving platform, one of my favorite spots on the planet Earth, he would hang everywhere. But really, walking, the glute loop, the mini band, you'll be doing okay. All right, thank you. Fun question for me to answer, and I appreciate it. As I'm speaking today, I just got off of a trip yesterday, and because I'm home, I could do some other things. When I come home, I like the sauna. When I come home, I like to Well, if I can, a hot bath or anything like that, just to kind of take some of that travel out of me. But what also I do about the sauna and the hot bath is, and there's I travel well, but there is a lot of salt when you travel. Airplane food, airport food, fast food tends to have a lot of salt, and so I like to come in here and do kind of a sauna and drink a lot of fresh water and see if I can desalinize my pores for a few days. Your mileage may vary, but this is good advice and I appreciate the question. Thanks so much, okay? Thank you. We have a question from Josh, real simple question. I recently viewed one of your videos on loaded carries from 4 years ago. In it, you said that you should not do double kettlebell overhead position loaded carries. I was curious about the reason. Any insights will be appreciated. Wasn't that interesting? I thought I imagine I would explain it. I have a DVD, gosh, I'm sure you can get it on Target Publishing still, but it's called Everything's Over My Head. And that and the loaded carry one called Carried Away. Have a couple of loaded carry ideas. I always believed if the single best overhead loaded carry is the waiter walk. The single best overall carry, I think, is the suitcase carry. But once you move to doubles, if anything bad happens, and I want you to just I have in front of me 2 cups of coffee. Just stumble with 2 cups of coffee with your arms locked out overhead and just tell me what happens. And now imagine you got 28 kilo bells coming down on your skull. I like barbell carries overhead. We have a combination called strongman carries where there's 2 ways you can do it. You can walk with the bar in the rack position, stop every so often, either where a cone is or when the coach says, lift. And then you either do a push jerk or a military press, whatever you can do, bring it back down to the rack and walk again. I'll say lift, you push jerk, you bring it down, you walk. And the other variation is using the barbell, both hands overhead, you walk, and then every so often you bring it down, push jerk it back up, and you walk with the load over your head. Now, if something bad happens with the barbell, and when you step away, you only have to avoid one object. With double kettlebells, you have to avoid 2 objects. I've never had an injury doing double overhead work. I've never had that. But when I do certifications or when I see people trying them in gyms, very often when people add a little bit of ballistic to those double overhead movements, you can see that the person's coordination or their core strength, which I always jokingly call anaconda strength, or their technical proficiency just doesn't work out. And they'll get an uneven lockout, which means, one side locks out perfectly and the other one stops and presses out, or stops and they lean into it. And if you have a fatigued person, and loaded carries get you fatigued, and they have an uneven finish, the bells are going to come down. Even if it's to protect the gym floor, or even if it's protect the sidewalk in front of the house, or even if it's to protect your kettlebells long term. Because breaking a kettlebell, and it's only happened to me one time in my career, because the athlete was screwing around, but I have a different word for what he actually did. He was, not screwing around, but the other word. And I'm still mad because it almost looked like it was done on purpose. And that's the only kettlebell I've ever had broken. And it's hard to break kettlebells, but if you drop them from the overhead position to cement or asphalt, there's a good chance something's going to happen if you keep doing that over and over. So that's why, okay? I don't necessarily dislike any exercise, but sometimes, Josh, when you've been around, and hopefully you'll be around long enough, when you watch people at a gym or you watch people even at a weightlifting meet, and you watch the mistakes people make under stress, you begin to get a little bit more hesitant about recommending them with the sweep of the hand, everybody. I'm certainly not, a crazy safety crazy. I mean, I believe safety equals performance and performance equals safety. In other words, the better you are at something, the safer you are. The best discus throwers in the world probably aren't going to need a cage until they have that one bad throw, and then we all need that cage. The best hammer throwers probably don't need a cage unless they have that one bad throw, and then we all need that cage. So when I look at exercises, sometimes, Josh, I just kind of go, oh, for the broad sweep of the population, that's probably not something we need. You'll notice that certain kettlebell exercises, and I'm just moving to that. The bent press, a great exercise I teach you at certs, but all you need to do is just look at the way a normal person moves, and you can realize that even though the bent press might be a good goal for them, they have a lot of small steps in between. The windmill, great exercise, but you watch most people how they move, and there's a few steps before they should do it. With the double overhead carry, again, probably you and I could probably do it okay without a problem. When I get in trouble, I have the worldview that it's okay to stop. No one cares, bring the weights down, put them to the ground, and fight on another day. A lot of people, they'll try to impress you and fight, even though their shoulders and their elbows are giving out, and that's when the danger really ramps up. Thank you, Josh. It's a question, and I hope the answer, those of you who are trainers and coaches, I'd hope you'd think about every exercise you coach and preach and teach, and think about is this for everybody? Stu McGill's got that great idea where you have an exercise in your workout plan. Here's the name of the exercise. Here's the reps, the sets, the load, maybe the rest period, and in a final column, why is it in there? And if you don't have a good reason why an exercise is in there, and your client or yourself gets hurt, that's, I don't know if that was a win-win situation. Thank you. From Josh, we go to Jacob, and Jacob asks this: I've become a big fan of yours in recent months. I have purchased and read the Armor Building Formula, Mass Made Simple, and I'm in the middle of Easy Strength Omnibook. I have to say, these are pretty good. My question, however, is a slightly different expertise of yours. Don't worry. I have some questions about some things in your books as well, but I'll save those for a later date. I have recently started as an instructor at a local college. I am teaching precision machining, and I was wondering if you had any tips for keeping the interest of a class when material that you're teaching gets a little dry. Any other helpful tips on teaching would be greatly appreciated as well. Jacob, I'm pretty convinced you can breathe life into precision machining. My neighbor growing up took that course, and he made himself a homemade cannon, a very small one. And famously, we went up to the high school, South City High, and he put his homemade cannon on the ground. He inserted the ball-bearing marble that he had designed it for, and then took a quarter stick of dynamite. I believe that's what an M80 is. I don't know. Stuck it in at the bottom, lit the match, and then I realized watching this that my friend, who often would do some of the stupidest things in the world, was now lighting a quarter stick of dynamite into a cannon that he made himself. So we all leaped to the ground and it went off, and there's more to the story, but I still think the what's that thing with legal, I still can get in trouble for what happened next. Nobody got hurt, but there was damage. You can breathe life into anything. Let me give you some advice, and I thought about this quite a while. My teaching style comes from Mr. Jacobs, my high school biology teacher. And Mr. Jacobs was a really good teacher, and I didn't notice it at the time, but he did a really interesting thing. When we studied the smaller single-celled animals, we basically spent a couple days, and he was teaching us about amoebic dysentery and how it impacted the body. Well, amoebic dysentery is kind of interesting to high school kids. When we got to fish, he spent the whole time talking about the most recent research on shark attacks and sharks. Well, I got to tell you, sharks are a lot more interesting to study than, cod. And I can remember specifically him saying, okay, we're going to have a test this week. And, obviously a lot more information about fish is in the textbook. Make sure you read and study that too. Well, by the time, after listening to the shark attack stuff and the statistics and the signs you can look for and the kinds of sharks that attack humans and don't attack humans, you got to that, and we already understood the 3 kinds of scales that fish have, and we understood about this, the line, the lateral line that can sense, movement. We knew all that. So the first thing I'm going to tell you is find out what's interesting about find the most interesting thing you can about every topic you're going to come up with and teach that. If you're doing precision machinery work, I think, if you're making cannons and you're making pan flutes and you're making whatever it is, interesting things, I think you're going to keep your students leaning in and wanting more information. The second thing I thought about was something I use as a teacher, and I don't think I invented it, but boy, it worked well. The first day of class is always just a waste of time. You go through the syllabus and then you got 45 minutes to blow off. And I thought to myself, my students are paying too much money to blow off 45 minutes of their education on the first day. So I used to give a pop quiz to all my students on the first day. And basically it was a true-false pop quiz that had questions that summarized the entire semester. And the students would freak out and they would argue over questions with me. But what it did is I highlighted the whole semester. A favorite of mine is when I taught Christian scriptures or New Testament. It was something along the lines of this: true or false, only 3 of the books of the New Testament Christian scriptures are not letters. Well, it's true because Luke is a letter and Acts of the Apostles, Dear Theophilus. And of course, Revelation is also a letter. He's writing to these churches. It's a silly question, but what it did is it opened up all these little doors for interest. You could have something as simple as, if you're doing a nutrition class, let's see, protein and carbs, I think, are 4 grams of, calories, and protein and carbs are 4 calories, fat is 9, but alcohol is 7. But you could just ask a simple question like that. There's more calories per unit of alcohol than protein. It's something that simple that just opens the door for the class. No matter what it is, just find fun little things that open up. And if you have, say, a semester course and you have 10 units, 20 units, take 1 or 2 and just make interesting questions that allow people. So when the class first starts, and by the way, as I went through that pop quiz, I would have the students take notes. And then towards the end of the semester, when we came to the final, I would say, pull out that pop quiz from the first week. And they would realize that I had set the stage for the whole semester. The next thing I really recommend is I think tests should teach. Now, I don't know about your field, but that was why I always thought reading comprehension questions were so good. Many of my students, and I noticed this over time, when I first taught, students were still very good readers. But one of the things I noticed over my career, I started teaching in, 1979 is when my first lectures would have been in 80. So yeah, my students were much more competent at classic reading. Now, because of the onset of the internet and of course all those books, the other day, I saw that The Sword and the Stone has, one of those cheat books, Cliff Notes or Spark Notes or whatever. And I thought that was kind of funny because it's like, why wouldn't you want to read why would you want Cliff Notes to Dune? But I guess students do that to save time. I don't think you save any time because you lose all the flavor and color. So I put reading comprehension questions in tests. It's 1 paragraph. It can be a sentence, 1 paragraph, a couple of paragraphs. And then you ask specific questions about what they just read. A couple things. First, it ensures that your students are reading the materials you want them to read. The second is instead of having them just worry about rote memory, you're giving them the materials, and then you can ask a much more advanced question on analysis or synthesis or something like that of the written word. One of the things I tried really hard, I know I didn't come up with this either, but I always called it the accordion technique. So as I would teach, I would have a folder for every concept. Now, if you have a book if your textbook is chapters and there's 20 chapters, you would have 20 folders. For me, the folders became subfolders of subfolders of subfolders, but that's the accordion technique. So I might write something as simple. Now, if I'm doing a track and field class, that's pretty simple. So I'm going to have one folder called discus and one folder called shot put. And in that folder, I'm going to slide in the handouts I'm going to give. I might slide in the test that I'm going to have on that section. And I'm just going to keep, so I have, the first time I work on it, I have a folder that's got 1, 2, 3 pieces of paper. When I go to the board and I start explaining things, I start to write stuff, and this is my next note from you. Always write down what you wrote on the text, whatever, your blackboard, your whiteboard, whatever it is nowadays. Because sometimes when someone asks a question, you go to the board and you draw it out. You get these wonderful insights. I was teaching a class. It included the section on marriage, and I drew this little drawing to explain how most societies really don't care about your marriage until you ask for, like in the United States here, Social Security or insurance. And then society gets interested about your marriage, okay? Well, I just drew this little thing and I realized this is an excellent way in the future to explain the relationship between two people and society. I thought that was really great. So I wrote it down, and for years I used that little tiny insight in my lectures until it became kind of the backbone of that first part of the lecture. As you go through your career and you find more interesting things, like, for example, you pull up Popular Mechanics magazine, I'm guessing, I don't know what they are anymore, Biblical Archaeology Review, and you find an article that relates to one of your topics, you tear the article out and you drop it in. Now, if you have extra time or extra brain pan, as you get that week, you look at that article, you reread it, and you realize, man, there's something good here. Very often I would cut out articles and I would tape them on to the materials, and it was just a wonderful way to go. So this is an example of one for you. I just randomly pulled it out, and it's interesting because everything I said, I have all kinds of notes. These are notes from the board. These are additional notes after the board. These are summaries of the notes. Now those are just my lecture notes, but inside there's even more clarity here. In fact, that's really interesting. I should read all this. I have the cheat sheets that I give my students. I would often give my students the notes that I wanted them to read. This is actually quite good. And then sometimes I would even put in my own academic notes when I took the class, which is right there. So this is my idea. You can make it as big or as small as you want. Sometimes you can even add fun things to it. This is an example of, I used to teach the Shroud of Turin, so I had this cool picture. I had some references. There was some fire information. There was an environmental study. There was a National Geographic article in here. And then there's the famous negative photo. Well, it's all in one spot. In this box here are the notes for 5 different academic classes. It just doesn't take a lot of room or space. So those are just a few ideas that I use. I think teaching is one of those great occupations that you really do grow every year in your ability to deal with material. And you have to have a system that allows you to see the growth. When I look at that right there that I just showed you, that kind of made me happy about a lot of the things I did. Boy, I hope that has value, okay? And good luck on this. Okay, thank you. John asked a question, real quick question. What do you think about using just singles deadlift program as the hinge movement for an 8-week easy strength program? And then he adds something. I'm 62 years old and focused on getting stronger without injuring myself. I think singles in the deadlift for you is a good idea. I am going to give you one little, it's not even a warning. It's, from my experience, don't do more than 6 reps in the single on the deadlift in any easy strength program. That's just a thing I kind of learned from my experience. It was interesting not long ago. I was looking at Jason's notes from when he listened to Pavel at the Power to the People workshop. And Pavel said the same thing about just 6 singles. Just don't overdo it. Don't chase it. And if 6 singles feels like too much, do what I do with clean and jerks. I do 3 clean and jerks in my training because I feel like that whole body lift has such an impact on me. And I want to come back and train again and train again and train again. I pulled that down to just 3 singles in the clean and jerk in my easy strength workouts. So I would say try 6 singles in the deadlift. If you feel like that's too much volume, drop it back a little bit, okay? Easy question to answer, but of course now the real work comes as you try to make that work, okay? Thank you. JP has a question, and it's hard for me to answer this because, let me give it to you. I just bought Mass Made Simple, and I have shoulder issues that prevent me from barbell benching and any kind of overhead pressing. I know how adamant you are about not adapting changing programs, so I'm not going to ask for alternatives for the military bench press portion. But do you think it would be worth it to just follow the squat portion of Mass Made Simple for my leg days? Okay, so the problem with having a shoulder issue, I don't know of a good injury. It's funny, I say that like that, I have to catch myself. I just said I don't know of a good injury. I hope you're all feverishly writing down that piece of brilliance. But if you have a shoulder injury, it's going to be real hard to do any training. I've had people ask me, Dan, I have bad shoulders. How can I Olympic lift? You can't. Dan, I have bad lower back. How can I become a power lifter? I don't know. It's going to be tough. The program is the complexes, the military presses, the barbell bench press, the bat wings, the bird dog, and then you squat. But let's make sure we listen to JP's question. JP asked, what if he just did the squat portion? I don't know what your results are going to be, but if you decided to do that with whatever's safe for your upper body, whether that's suspension trainers or whatever you figured out, and it seems like you probably did, the only thing I would suggest is instead of doing it the 6-week option, go to the 7-week. The 6-week option is one where you lift day 1, recover day 2, day 3 is that recharge renewal day, day 4 lift. I would just slide to the 7-week option and just circle 2 days a week where you're going to do the squats and whatever else you want to do. I don't know if there is any perfect program, but this is not bad, and not bad is pretty good. I hope that helps. And for those of you who find yourself getting hurt and you can't do certain things, be sure to take 10 seconds and look back and say, the science of hindsight, how did I get here? And if it took you 20 years to blow your shoulders up doing something stupid, it's gonna be real hard for your physio or your physical trainer or your surgeon to, well, maybe your surgeon has a better chance, but to just, wave a magic wand and cure it. For those of you who are just learning how to lift, keep an eye on things. Try not to let yourself get these little injuries that's going to impact you long term. Okay, thank you. Good question, JP. I would recommend 7-week program, squatting twice a week, and just circling those 2. Okay. We have a question from Steve, and I'm really probably not going to answer it, but here we go. I'm obese, but I have a decent level of strength. He's a 26-year-old male, 350 pounds at 6'4", 200K deadlift for my American audience, that's 440, 140 squat, about 308 back squat, 100K bench, 220, and 65K military, which is what, 165, I think. Yeah. First and foremost, my goal is to get down to healthy 15% body fat range. From 350 to 15% body fat range. I don't know what the number is, but that should be good. After that, I would like to pick up martial arts again. I have previously trained in karate and Muay Thai. I have turned to kettlebell training for their cardio and strength training properties, while I try to slim down and retain functional strength. Also, I see kettlebell training come highly recommended for martial arts conditioning. Okay. Currently, I'm following the dry fighting weight program with a 60-minute walk on rest days and water fasting on weekends. Wow, you're taking this seriously if you're doing water fasts on 2 days. How can I adjust my program for better results? What are your thoughts on fasting in combination with training for fat loss? Is there any other advice I should follow as to strive to lose as much of this tremendous amount of fat? It's unusual to me that most kettlebell strength programs ignore horizontal pulling. Why is that? Because it's kettlebells. It's not a barbell. It's not a... I responded too quickly. Let's get back to that. First off, I'm Dan John, and I don't know what the dry fighting weight program is. I see it mentioned on the Reddit threads a lot. But this is an important thing for my whole audience to read. I get questions about Pavel's programs a lot. And somebody said that I was a hypocrite over on Reddit because I wrote the foreword of Pavel's book. But I say here that I don't believe in minimalist training. Well, first off, I do believe in minimalist training. There's great value to it. But what I think a lot of people don't understand is that, when you ask specific questions about simple and sinister, you need to ask Pavel. I don't know what you're supposed to do on week 8, day 3, because that's a program I don't do. So just as a general note, and this isn't anything, Steve, this isn't a criticism at all, but when you have questions about certain programs, you really should ask the authors of them. I'll get questions about these programs from these other kettlebell people, and it's like, they say I should do, this clean and press thing. Why? I don't know. That's their program. I mean, I can defend armor building formula. I can defend all my works because I know them, I've done them, and I've coached them, so I have some experience. When you ask about better results, the first thing I'm concerned is that you're doing the 5-2 in kind of in a unique way. If you read Brad Pillen, and of course Brad is really the guy who gave us Eat, Stop, Eat, which really is, intermittent fasting is more of a, some people do more of a 16-8, so 16-hour fast, 8-hour feeding window. Some people do a 24, so 20-hour fasting and 4-hour. But when you slide over to those 24-hour fasts, this is something Brad talks about on his podcast quite a bit. And I just want you to remember this. After about 24 hours, you've pretty much, you've gotten all the benefits of that strict of a single day fast. True, you can keep fasting, but the biggest improvement, the bulk of the benefits come in that 24-hour mark, 20 to 24-hour mark. After that, it's diminishing returns. I would prefer, but what do I know? I'd prefer if you did slide to like 5 days normal eating, 1 day fast, 5 days normal eating, 1 day fast, a little bit more like Brad suggests. But if you're doing the 2 days because it's easy for you because of work or life, keep doing it. But my one thing I just want you to remember, the benefits that you're getting on that second day of fasting aren't nearly as good as the first day. There's still benefits, but they might not be as much. Personally, that's one of the reasons right now, I fast hard after certain workouts of my week. I do the 24 hours, but I also do the big protein hit. So I work out, do the big protein hit, then fast, because I'm just trying to work through some of this new research to see if it does help. One thing I would recommend to you is to please walk after every kettlebell workout. You're saying that you're walking on your rest days and your water fasted weekends. I don't think that's enough. I think walking has to be part of what you do. Now, the nice thing is, and I kind of discovered this myself, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour, and by the way, again, diminishing returns. For me, that 30-minute walk after every weight workout has just really benefited me in so many ways. So that would be a big one for me, is for advising you to walk after every workout, and then, but only for 30 minutes, and then reserve that longer walk on your rest days. I have a book, Easy Strength for Fat Loss, and in that book, you can get it at danjohnuniversity.com/bookstore. I have a lot of other ideas about helping you maintain, and even help with some with body fat, but it's a lots of small little things, and frankly, a couple of them have really helped me a lot. From Brad Pillin, I've gone back to more saunas. From Tim Anderson, I'm doing more original strength. So my easy days now are saunas followed by original strength, followed by a walk. And I find that to be just delightful. The saunas do have some value in body fat loss. You've got to read this book called The Book on Heat. How the original strength helps me is that if I feel good and I move good, well, a correlation, I should look good. So for me, the movement moving a little makes me want to move a lot. And of course, the walk is a great follow-up. On the horizontal pulling, you can do anything you want. I mean, you can just add one arm rows like I recommend in my new book. Kettlebell workout companion. That's the one arm row is something we do a lot of, but I read kettlebell stuff all the time. I couldn't understand why some of the authors do, or some of the writers of programs do half the stuff they recommend. They'll have all these really like one time I read a workout that had 3 sets of 3 in the windmill, and I always struggled with what are 3 repetitions in the windmill. Now I know some of you say, oh, down, up, down, up, down, up. But when you're doing windmills, it's supposed to be a lot more, it's supposed to be kind of movement based and flow based. Reps didn't make sense to me, but what do I know? I hope I helped you on that. And good luck. I really wish you would look into my book, Easy Strength for Fat Loss, because I have people who've weighed 350 have really brought their weight down. I have 2 examples of that. But there's also a kettlebell program on my website, danjohnuniversity.com, for this too. Good luck to you on this, and I hope it helps. So we got a question from Andrew that's kind of fun. As a man who has seen and done a lot, what is the most impressive set or rep you've ever seen someone perform? And similarly, what set or rep are you most proud of for yourself? Okay, well, I mean, my own, I'll tell you real quick, but so I'm at Utah State University, and we had one of the football players walk in one day, and my buddy, who later played for the Detroit Lions as an offensive lineman, he told me that this guy was a one-trick pony. This is the only thing he could do well. All of his other lifts and his speed were terrible. But he walked up to the bench press rack. He pulled 225 off the rack like this, curl grip, and he did an absolutely strict curl with 225. Like I probably could do 85 pounds, even now. I mean, this guy curled 225 like it wasn't there. I got to tell you, folks, there was no lean back. There was no art. And he just squeezed it up and squeezed it down. I mean, that really made my eyes pop. I guess the next one I was thinking about was Mario Martinez. Now, Mario was a senior, he was a silver medalist in the Olympic lifts in the 84 Olympics. And when we were young, so after the Montreal Olympics, they opened up a new class, the 100 kilo class, or for my American audience, 220 pounds. So we had a weightlifting meet. I want to say it was the first week of January, and I could be wrong, of 1977 when the class first showed up. Now, what was fun about this meet is that in my class, I was a 220. I probably weighed 203 or something like that, 204. But every successful lift you made was a new national record. So this was kind of fun. So, of course, Mario came in, and I think we're the exact same age, close anyway. And he snatched 303 pounds. Now, that's impressive when you're 18, 19 years old, okay? Yeah, so we'd have been 18, 19, yeah. I knew Mario a long time. When we were in high school, we threw the discus against each other. And it was interesting because we'd always talk about this. In fact, at the American Open in 1991, we laughed about, I said, I always wanted to be as strong as Mario. And Mario said, well, I wanted to throw the discus as far as you could, which I thought was kind of funny. I would say, now you're saying, so what? So 303. Well, at the time, Mario had just started, as I understand it, with a new job. And I think he was a garbage collector. And all he had to train with, and if the story's wrong, I apologize, but this is what Kim Goss told me, 120 pounds. So he would do snatches and clean and jerks, sets of 20, squat, snatch, squat, clean and jerk, with 120 pounds. And he shows up at a weightlifting meet with just that. Now, I guess he did do a total a week ahead of time, but still. And snatched 303. And I just remember thinking, everything I know about being strong is wrong. And since that day, I've kind of kept that story in the back of my mind. The next one is the shot putter, Al Feuerbach. It had been, again, mid-1970s. It was before the Montreal Olympics, so it had probably 75, 76. And we're at a track meet, and I look over, and he's warming up for the shot. And he moves around a little bit, does a few stretches, and then he takes a towel and does an overhead squat with the towel. And I've never seen someone that big. He was 6'1", probably somewhere between 240 and 270. But he dropped down so beautifully. I just remember thinking, I was still in high school then. I've got to learn the Olympic lifts, and I wish I could, and I need to be that flexible. Well, I never got that flexible. Of course, Al famously won the national championship in the shot put. And I think in the Olympic lifts, the same basic weekend or something like that. 73 maybe. Pretty impressive guy. Oh, incredible. The last little story I'll just tell you is when I used to work with the Utah Jazz. They're a basketball team. And invited some of the guys over to the house. I lived in a bungalow over here in Sugar House. And watching these guys have to duck to come into my front door. And then we had a revolving fan. They couldn't stand too close of it because they go like this, they would hit their fingers. And Walter famously, he went, "Oh no, it hurt my hand." I was freaking out. I didn't realize that ceiling fans do no damage to you. I didn't know that. But yeah, those would be the most kind of inspiring. You'll notice that most of the stories are kind of old because you almost hit a saturation. When you go into an NFL locker room, the smallest guy in the team's huge, the biggest guy you'll ever meet. John Stockton's hands, he was a jazz player. He could palm the basketball. His fingers, it was like he had another set of fingers on him. Karl Malone was just so wide. You almost get numb to how great these athletes are, how just amazing they are and everything. Most proud for me, I would say when I snatched 142.5, that's 314 pounds. That was a good lift. I wasn't prepared for it. I mean, I hadn't trained really up for it. But Dave Turner and I was lifting well that day, and Dave just said, "You want to try the state record?" And because we didn't have the right plates, then I had to just keep upping my number. It's a weird story. Don't worry about it. And so I snatched 314. And then probably when I won the Pleasanton Highland Games, no, I have a better story. It was just a small Highland Games, but they had an unflippable caber. It was a beast. It was poorly balanced. And I'm sitting there, I'm just like this. And this dad walked up to another competitor and said to his son, he goes, "Son, you've got this cinch. No one's flipping that one." And my friend Jeff Armstrong said, he looked in my eyes and he said, "Oh no, the beast is unleashed, you know." And I picked up the caber and I started to run and I hit a hole in the grass, common occurrence in the caber. And I had to stop, catch myself, turn directions, ran, and I flipped the 12. It means nothing to most of our listeners, but if you've ever picked up and sprinted with a caber, it's really hard to do. Change directions with the caber, it's even harder. So those would be my two, but fun question, and I appreciate answering that. That was quite fun. This is a interesting question. It's from Sean, and Sean just finished the 10,000 swing challenge. Congratulations. That's just fantastic. His background: I am 50, 6 foot, and as of today, 275, down from 388 in 4 years. Holy cow, congratulations. Nice work. I dipped down to 250, but gained 35 in 2 years after taking my eyes off the prize. All right, let's get your eyes back on the prize. Anyway, I just wanted to comment on my experience with the challenge. First and foremost, I feel like my posture has gotten better. And I think if you hit the top in that vertical plank, it really does remind the body to be tall. That's why I'm a big fan from my original strength experience. I'm doing a lot of drills with this 5-pound, it's from a company called Ringside. It's just a head weight. And I'm doing more and more of my little drills with that on, just to remind myself to stay tall. That's good. I like this. In the morning, I don't find my hips and lower back screaming at me. That's good. I drive a city bus for 8 hours and commute an hour each way. 10 hours in a vehicle. So as expected, my hip flexors are jacked. Being morbidly obese since junior high, my feet didn't point straight. I never realized it before losing weight. My left would point at 12, but my right would point closer to 2. After the challenge, I noticed both point at 12. Oh, good. Mentally, it has also helped me see I can do hard things. For years, I avoided trying, having the mentality, I just failed, so why try? I'm already pursuing Dan Johns University Workout Generator, good for you. On my next program, I'm leaning on Lean Made Simple. So it's a good program. He has 2 questions. Have you ever thought of giving out diplomas at DJU? Like maybe an associate for completing a challenge or something, all the way to a doctorate for getting RKC certified. Sean, I never thought of it, but I think that is a delightful idea. I really do. I like it. Because we do have some things like the 10,000 swing challenge. You should be able to, press a button and you can print out your own, congratulations. That is a great idea. I'm not sure an RKC certification is doctoral level, but I like where your head's at. And, let me think about it, because this is really it's a fun idea, and I've never thought of it. So that is great. The second question is this. Why did you decide on religious studies as a major? If someone showed me a picture of you and told me your accomplishments and then asked me what I thought your major was, religious studies would be the last majors I think of right before modern dance. Interesting question you said that, because I did take modern dance classes at Utah State University, and my girlfriend was in that program. And for those of you who've ever heard my workshops, you'll notice I give a nod to Martha Graham. Why religious studies? Actually, so I got my associates. I got my California paralegal. I think is it still licensed, or I can't remember what it's called now. Certificate, license, whatever. Because I didn't know if I'd get any scholarship offers after my junior college. And then I went to Utah State and I majored in poli-sci. And the reason I majored in poli-sci was because I met Professor Norm Peterson, a good friend of my coach, Ralph Mon, and I just thought he was such a good guy, I would get a bachelor's. A year after I got my degree, I was working for Coach Mon as his assistant coach, his strength coach, and I bumped into Professor Peterson one day, and he said, I've got this money for this thing, and I got paid to get my master's in history because of this nice little stipend scholarship. So associates, bachelor's, and master's. Well, when I went off to the Middle East, I was working at the Middle East Center at the University of Utah. I was going to get an advanced degree in Middle East Studies. It didn't happen. And when I came back, I was very sick. I got that liver parasite. I lost all that weight, and I was really struggling. And one of the things I really impacted me on my trip there was the role and influence of religious traditions in Middle East history, which is the on the level of understatement. I think I just won the contest, and that's what got me going. And because of my, I have certain skills in reading and comprehension, and then teaching other people. It was real natural for me to teach certain classes. The other teachers I worked with would ask me to come in and speak on certain aspects of the Holy Lands, certain aspects of Islam, not just Hebrew history, but modern day Israeli things. I could talk freely about the Druze, who I became very good friends with. And then all of a sudden I just started as I became more and more interested, when I would be doing work in Gilgamesh and realize, right there is the flood story. I'd be doing work in Beowulf, and I would see the Trinity. And from there, Sean, is what got me going. I can read The Sword and the Stone and see, the role and of certain religious traditions floating throughout that too. It's just something I got really interested in. And sometimes when you're like a natural in something, it's real easy to continue on in the educational path. So, gosh, I hope that helps. I got to tell you, my friend, first off, the second question I loved about my career, but man, this idea of the diplomas and achievements, it's really a good idea, and we'll work on that for you, okay? Wow, that's it. That's all the questions this week. That's episode 276 in the rear view mirror. And remember, if you have questions, send them to podcast@danjohnuniversity.com. Each and every week, I sit down here and answer your questions. And until next time, let's all keep on lifting and learning.